Hello everyone, welcome to Selah and our journey through Lent as we explore 7 spiritual disciplines. On Mondays we're focusing on the discipline of simplicity and what that might look like in our walks with Jesus and in our day-to-day lives. I've heard before that there's a lot of value in repeating things and that you need to hear something at least 3 times before you remember it. And so I'm going to pull something from last week's episode. And I think I'm going to share this at the start of each Monday so that we can keep in mind what simplicity is as a discipline and why it's important for us as we follow Jesus.
I will stop and breathe in your presence. Just breathe. Just breathe.
The spiritual discipline of simplicity is to intentionally shed the things of this earth that are keeping you from fully experiencing the life God desires for you. Simplicity is letting go so that you can make more room in your life for God. It's creating margin and space in your life to breathe more freely and loose the chains of the world. It's making room in our lives so that we can actually see God and have heart-to-heart connection with Him rather than money, possessions, and a very busy calendar filling our line of sight between our eyes and His, stealing our peace and focus. Towards the end of last week's episode, we took some time to have a think about if there was anything stealing our focus and stopping us from fully experiencing God in our lives. To look at if there were any areas where we needed to have a bit of a life declutter. I couldn't just think about that for a moment. I've been thinking about it since, and I reckon there's quite a lot for me. There's bits in every element of my life. My house needs a big sort, even more so because I'm getting married soon and there's 2 of us that are having to blend 2 homes into one. I'm juggling different commitments with varying degrees of success, and I think I've boxed off my life into different areas in an attempt to help me cope, and within that I'm not being 100% true to myself. On reflection, it sounds like that isn't really working too well. Would you agree? Now, I know there will absolutely be seasons in life that are more complex and busy than usual, and we have to take those things as they are, knowing they'll pass. But let's think more generally about how we can walk in simplicity in day-to-day life to make the necessary room for God. I read a quote from a guy called Thomas Kelly from a book called Testament of Devotion. It says, "The choice is not between a simple life and a complex one, but between a deep life and a shallow one, leading a life of focus or a life of distraction. We feel honestly the pull of many obligations and try to fulfill them all, and we're unhappy, uneasy, strained, oppressed, and fearful we shall be shallow. We have hints that there is a way of life vastly richer and deeper than all this hurried existence, a life of unhurried serenity and peace and power. If only we could slip over into that centre. We have seen and known some people who seem to have found that deep centre of living, where the fretful calls of life are integrated, when no, as well as yes, can be said with confidence. Isn't that convicting? I don't want a shallow and complex life. I want a deep and simple one. I want to follow that call from Matthew 6 to seek first God's kingdom. A few years ago, I had to make a pretty big decision about whether to move to another country or not. I wasn't sure what to do at the time. I had a lot of things going on, and I was chatting to a friend about it, and she shared the following with me. Imagine that you're standing in the middle of a river. It's flowing around you and loads of good things are floating past you. They all look good, and so you pick something up. Then you see something else that looks good, and so you pick that up too. Then something else. Then another thing floats by and you grab that. And you keep on picking up until your hands are completely full. But just then, something different comes along. It's not just good, it's great. It's so great that you know you're supposed to pick it up, but you can't because your hands are already full of all the other good stuff. Then she said, it's not that the things that you're holding are bad. We've already established that they're good. But if we say yes to every single thing that comes by our way and looks good, then we might miss out on the great thing that comes. We won't be able to say yes to it or grab hold of it because we've already maxed out our capacity. I felt really challenged by that. Sometimes I see something is good or beneficial and think, oh, that's good, therefore it must be God. And so I say yes to it. Or say yes to it because it sounds like the kind of thing I should say yes to. Or even it's something I want to say yes to, like going for a coffee with someone that I love. Sometimes we need to say no to things to give ourselves time to breathe, to free up our time and our hands for something else that God might be calling us to in that moment, even if it's for something like being still in the presence of God. Can you relate? We're so used to filling our time with things, and I wonder if there are things that we miss out on, things that God is wanting to say to us that we don't hear because our hands are full already with things that we didn't need to or shouldn't have picked up. I'm not saying this to condemn myself or you. It's super easy to do, and this is why it's good to keep coming back to what simplicity is all about, to ask ourselves if there are things that we need to shed so that we can make room for God in our lives. A side note, I did leave the country for New Zealand, and it was one of the most life-changing times of my life. I'm very grateful to the grace of God for emptying my hands so that I could embrace that opportunity fully. In 2 Corinthians 1 it says, "For our boast is this, the testimony of our conscience, that we behaved in the world with simplicity and godly sincerity, not by earthly wisdom, but by the grace of God, and supremely so toward you." There are things that the world will tell us that our lives need to look like or be filled with, things that the world will tell us that we should do. But Scripture calls us to live differently, to behave with simplicity. What do you think about that? What might that mean or look like for you? For me, at the moment, I think it means asking myself the question, is what I'm about to do or say yes to going to cause me to act differently than usual? Am I being fully who God made me to be in this situation or with this particular thing? At the start of this episode, I talked about how I've been boxing off different areas of my life and dealing with them differently. I know in some of those areas I don't act the same. I might be chilled out and easygoing in one, and then a total stress head in the other. That isn't how God calls us to live. Behaving with simplicity at the moment for me means being consistent in heart and attitude. I know that's going to be a massive challenge, but I feel the conviction there. Maybe I need to strip some things back in my life to help me, and I definitely know that I can't get there without Jesus. As we listen to this next song, have another think about what behaving with simplicity looks like for you, and I pray that God gives us the grace this week to work at it with Him.
Left my fear by the side of the road, hear you speak, won't let go. I fall to my knees as I lift my hands to pray. Got every reason to hear again the Father's love that draws me in, and all my eyes wanna see is a glimpse of you. All I need is you.